Hey, Cameron here with the CButters Tech channel, and today I'm looking at the MinisForum V3 tablet. Now this is a very highly awaited device, specifically for a couple reasons, not just from the company itself, but from enthusiasts who have really wanted a Surface Pro style device with an AMD chipset. AMD has gotten very competitive, especially when you are limited by the TDP or thermal headroom of the device. So thin and light devices do really well with AMD silicon. And so I'm super excited to test this thing out. I've been reviewing Surface Pro devices for almost a decade, if not a decade. So I have a good insight about what feels good, what doesn't, and how this thing is going to stack up against something like this, the also newly launched Surface Pro 10 for business. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first off, let's get familiarized with the MinisForum V3. Now it comes with three components. You have this kind of soft touch back cover, which doubles as a kickstand. It folds down. You can see it has metal on the crease of this and acts as a kickstand, but that does come off. And the third piece of this is the keyboard, which is very similar to Surface Pro. It magnetically removes and it connects up here. Now, one thing you won't see me doing, like a lot of reviewers, is first of all, this does not pop out like this. The point of this is that it folds down, opening access to the air ports here, and also doubles as a kickstand. The other thing is, while you can use this keyboard flat on the table, it has picked up a design trick that has been on Surface Pro for a long time, and that is the keyboard actually magnetically folds up and connects at the bottom of the screen, which I feel not only makes it look a lot more aesthetic, like when you have this down like here, it's kind of like flopping around. When you push it up and it connects magnetically to the screen here, you now get a geometric shape triangle that's actually stiffer and holds the whole setup a lot more rigid than what I have seen people kind of flopping this thing around. So on the device itself, if we look at the right side, we have power button, power LED, USB 4, Thunderbolt 40 gigabits per second, 2 speaker holes on each side. And on the other side, we also have volume up and down. We have a headphone jack, something you won't find on the Surface Pro 10 for business. So we still get a headphone jack, volume up and down, SD card slot. And on this side, we have a DisplayPort in, which we can use to make this an external monitor, which I'm not going to touch on much in this video particularly. So that is the MinisForum V3. Now, if we look at the Surface Pro 10, we do see, surprising similarities. You have the basic kickstand, and then you have also the type cover that folds up that also, you have that geometric shape here. This one takes a pen in the slot here, but it also, looks kind of strange. Then you pop it up magnetically on the screen and you get this much more rigid, more uniform, more laptop feeling device because of that. But how quick is the setup? Like a lot of times you're pulling your laptop up, you're using it. So how easy is it to fold these things down? Well, super similar. Let's fold these down and put them away. Very similar thing on the Surface Pro. You have an indentation that you can lift up this kickstand. On the MinisForum V3, you have flaps on any area that you can fold up and then use as a kickstand. So let's discuss the kickstand issue, because this is a first-gen device, and it shows. It's pretty refined, and I should hold my commentary for later. But let's just compare these kickstands really quickly. So Surface Pro 10. And the MinisForum. So look at the range of motion we get on the Surface Pro 10. You can go all the way up to here. If we look, so your lowest end is like literally about like this, and you can stand the device up just like this with that small of an angle. On the MinisForum, similar concept, but you're going to have to start your fold from the top, and this folds all the way down to about here. So this is the minimum fold angle you can have on the MinisForum, and look at the difference between this and the Surface. It's quite drastic, which gives you more angles that you can use it at. When we're working in between these angles, it's kind of fine, but the MinisForum, again, while it can go to the same angle here, on the Surface Pro, you can actually use that angle. So if I were to set this down, it still props it up. This is off the table. With this one, if you're trying to use it at this open angle, it's just going to shut on you. So the smallest amount of angle you can get is this, which is not bad, but the second you try to write on it or touch the screen, it's going to fold down. So this is definitely a Gen 1 kickstand. Obviously, I think MinisForum, and I think they're already working on this if they're not already, this was a crutch to get into a kickstand very quickly and easily. It's actually ingenious to be able to do this because manufacturing a hinge that works inside the device is actually pretty complex and difficult. They were able to get away with, you know, building their tablet device and then throwing the kickstand on after, and it goes away. So it's not bad, it's not great, and definitely while using the MinisForum V3, it's great. You know, it holds the device up just fine. I have no issues with the kickstand once it's in place, as long as it fits within your range of motion. So that's all I'll say about the kickstand. Let's talk about the keyboard. So one of the things about the type cover keyboard is it's actually a very solid piece of kit on the Surface Pro 10. And this is the high contrast one, so you can see the letters really well, which I like. However, the MinisForum V3 keyboard it's not bad, especially for being a type cover, but if you look at the flex and the feel on this, and I'm giving you some audio so you can kind of hear it, like this is very stiff. This over here is also quite stiff. Not a ton different, but because it's bigger in general, there's a little bit more flex and play in it than what you see on this one, but not too big of a deal. What I don't like about the keyboard, and in this video, I'm going to be talking a lot about what I don't like, but keep in mind, it's not that I don't like this device, because I actually really do like this device, but the Surface Pro 10 has had literally more than 10 iterations to perfect things. And that's why I'm calling out the slight refinements that I think the MinisForum V3 needs. Now, again, I've said this before, as a first-gen product, I think this is phenomenal. And the keys are fine. The keys feel very nice. There's enough travel for me. And I would say it's very, if anything, there's maybe just as much or more travel on the MinisForum type cover. It is slightly thicker than what you see on the Surface Pro 10. And I like this keyboard in general. The keys I feel are small, and some people may say it's designed more closer to what you find on a Mac, and maybe I'm just not used to that, but the keys feel like they could have been filled out a little bit more. So there's less gap between the keys on the Surface Pro 10, and sometimes I feel like not only are they a little bit smaller, but they're almost rounded, so I feel my fingers are like slipping off the keys rather than being, you know, conformed into the keys. But that said, I have no issue typing on this, and it's actually pretty good. Let's talk about the trackpad though. So if you're using the trackpad on the Surface Pro 10, this glass trackpad is really refined. And listen to that click. Okay, now over on the MinisForum, it actually feels super nice as well. And I find it to be just as agile as the Surface Pro 10. But where it's maybe not quite as good is if you listen to the clicking, you can just tell it's a little bit cheaper. It doesn't sound as refined. Here's the right click on the MinisForum, and here it is on the Surface Pro 10. You hear the difference? So V3, Surface Pro 10. It's just snappier, it's tighter. The mechanism that's doing that is just a lot tighter on the Surface Pro 10. And again, this is just the tiniest of nitpicks because this keyboard is actually really great. And one of the things I will say about it is I actually really like the material that they use for this. It's not Alcantara or anything, but it is like a fibrous, feels high-end plastic. I don't know if it's plastic. It feels like a pleather almost. And because it has that grain and texture in it, it looks really nice. But also, it doesn't show fingerprints or scratches as much as it might otherwise. So I really like, and even this cover on the back, like it just looks really nice and feels really high quality. I mean, I really think they did a great job. I don't like the mechanism so much. I would much rather have the integrated kickstand, but it is quite good for what it is. It feels high quality, which you don't always get that from all the manufacturers. Okay, so let's get back into the device. So I will say the magnets to hold the keyboard up on the screen, look how tight this is on the Surface Pro 10. It's physically almost difficult to pull the magnets off of this thing, but on the MinisForum V3, they're not nearly as strong. However, that's not really a big deal because when you type, you tend to push the keyboard into the screen rather than pulling it away. So not really an issue there, just an observational difference. So one thing that I will also note on the kickstands is because the Surface Pro has more angles, especially here, you can see that this screen can be more vertical than this screen is. This one's kind of tilted back, where this one can be almost upright. So minor differences here. The other thing about this keyboard is because it is a larger keyboard, they fit more keys on here. On the right hand side, they have all your delete, home, page up, page down, end key, where on the Surface Pro 10, it kind of ends at the enter and the backspace. So because the enter key and the backspace key are not on the very edge, and I'm used to them being there, on the Surface Pro 10, I found myself hitting the page down buttons occasionally and the home button when I was trying to hit backspace and return. But again, that's a muscle memory thing that's going to get better with time. So now that we've kind of looked at these devices in their laptop form, let's look at them in their tablet form. So the first thing we can point out is the glare reduction. So new for the Surface Pro 10 is a form of glare reduction, but you can still see it's quite shiny. It's still pretty, like when you're looking at that reflection there, it's not fuzzy. When you look at it on the MinisForum V3, you can see the glare reduction is even greater than the Surface Pro 10. And the side benefit is it's actually quite tacky, which means when you use the pen on this device later on, it's going to feel more like pen on paper than the Surface Pro might actually feel. This feels glossy, where this really feels like pencil on paper. You can almost listen to this. Hear that? You can almost hear it writing like it's writing on a piece of paper. So that's an interesting distinction between the two. But let's look at them side by side just to look at the aspect ratio. And again, we're looking at a 3:2 aspect ratio versus a 16:10 aspect ratio. And 3:2 is definitely a preference when you're using it in tablet form. You can see this feels quite skinny. But that said, it's not too bad. In fact, if you put it like this, you can see that the screens are actually almost exactly the same width. Just that you get an extra 1-inch edge on the MinisForum. But they're both quite usable. They're both roughly the same pounds. I think there's 100 grams or so of difference between these two devices side by side, and neither of them feel particularly heavy. I mean, if you're used to like an Android tablet that's like an 8-inch thing, like yes, these will feel very big, but in general, like these are serviceable tablets. Like this is no big deal to me. This is, I think this is, I mean, they're roughly 900 grams or so in these configurations, and they're great. So one thing I'll say about the Surface Pro 10 is you have these rounded corners, which feel really nice in the hand. It feels very balanced. In contrast, the MinisForum V3 has these sharp edges, and they're not uncomfortable per se, and they're not like knife sharp. They're slightly rounded. But they don't feel as premium on the edges. You feel like, okay, yeah, it doesn't just slide into your hand. It feels like, I don't know, it's a feel that could be greatly improved with a little bit better bezel, a little more round bezel instead of this very sharp edge. I mean, if you, that almost hurts my hand. If you do that, in comparison, the Surface Pro 10, everything just feels round on the edge and kind of just slides right into your hand. Feels really nice. So that is the tablet difference between this and the Surface Pro 10. Let's look at what I like to call lappability. So, what in the world is lappability, you ask? Well, for me that means like how easy is it to use the device when you are just sitting in a comfort area or on a chair or where you don't have a desk. Now let's take a look at the MinisForum V3. So if we look at it, we have it. We're going to fold down the laptop, kickstand, and we're going to use it like this. And as far as that goes, there's really no issues using it this way. Sometimes if you're going cross-legged on these things, you kind of like fold the kickstand up like this and can be sitting and browsing on your computer. And this is fairly natural to me. Like I say, I'm very used to using Surface Pro devices. One thing that I don't get with this is I don't have the ability, like I say, the kickstand doesn't have the same range of motion, but it's enough range of motion that it fits in with like literally 95% of my use cases. So if we take this and compare it to the Surface Pro 10, you can see it's that easy to use. Surface Pro 10, you know, kind of the gold standard. It's the same kind of deal. You've got, you know, you can use the device. And one thing I'll say is because this is skinnier, it tends to slide between my legs if I'm using it cross-legged like this, which can make it slightly awkward. I don't know if that's better or worse because if you take the MinisForum V3 and do the same thing, you fold it up and tilt it like this. Because it's wider, it almost kind of rests on your lap rather than falling in between your lap on your legs. It's a valid comparison for how people like to use these types of devices. And I mean, for example, I mean the thing that's cool about this is like you can at any given point pull the keyboard off, pull the kickstand off, and you know, use it as a tablet. You can just, you know, do what you need to do on your tablet like this very easily. Again, that's the same thing as the Surface Pro 10 though. And where you get into trouble with the MinisForum V3 in the comparison is you have 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 pieces that you're dealing with, which is a little bit of an extra hassle versus just having the Surface Pro 10, which you can then, you know, pull the kickstand off and you're good to go. You only need to find the kickstand, put it back on, and again, good to go. So some differences, I would definitely give the win to the Surface Pro 10, absolutely. But the MinisForum V3 is such a similar concept that it's very easy to do the same things that you're doing. If you use a Surface Pro device, you can use the MinisForum V3 about as well. So next we'll look at the scenario where you do have some sort of seat, but you only have your legs in front of you. So if we look at the MinisForum V3, we have the kickstand and we have keyboard. Now this keyboard is deeper than the Surface Pro 10 slightly, and you have to account for the kickstand. So, you know, I'm 5'7" or so, and this barely fits on my lap. So you can see if you're using this, like, you're gonna have to have good posture and hold it like this, or do this type of trick where you actually lift the keyboard up and rest it closer, like more on your chest, and then use it like this, which looks awkward, but it's actually not too uncomfortable. So this is a place where, yeah, the MinisForum is a bigger device, and if you're, you know, 6 foot plus, this may fit on your lap quite easily. Let's compare the Surface Pro 10 and see how it fares on my lap, the same size. A little bit smaller device, so when we open up the kickstand, pop it up, pretty comfortable, can fit the entire thing on my lap and still use the keyboard. So that is for my height and my dimensions, the MinisForum V3 does not fit in my lap quite as easily. It's just a no-brainer to put an 8840U in a tablet, and this is the first time we're seeing it. And I frankly hope this device does really, really well, because that is just a missed opportunity for the larger manufacturers. I don't know why they refuse to do it. Asus has done it on their Z3 and, sorry, not the Z3, but the X13, which also great choice by Asus. They're kind of a bit thinner and lighter where they need a little more thermal headroom. They'll put the Ryzen chips in it because they can get better performance with less watts than they could on the Intel side of things. And that hasn't always been the case, but it definitely has been the last few generations. And very few manufacturers are capitalizing on it. So let's talk about the screens here for a second. And first of all, I'm going to put these into their brightest modes. And I will tell you right now, they're very similar in brightness when they're both at their brightest mode. And I would say it's very equal. I will say the MinisForum is a much cooler display. And this is a warm display on the Surface Pro 10. And if I'm just looking at the colors here, like which one pops more, I would definitely say the MinisForum tends to have a more vivid color profile to my eye. I know that doesn't pick up on camera super well, but they're both incredible displays. I do tend to like the cooler display rather than the warmer display. Obviously, you get a bigger display with the MinisForum V3, so I do like that. I like that it's basically like a Surface Pro, but just bigger, and the screen is nice and large. Now this has 120 Hertz and this is a 165 Hertz panel. So the difference between 120 and 165 is not that big a deal. I mean, once you're past 120, I think it's a law of diminishing returns at that point. But yeah, so this is the highest brightness mode. Let's go to the lowest brightness mode and see which one can actually go darker. Now, one of the nice things about Surface Pros is they do have these, just like, they can go so low on their darkness, which is amazing if you're using it in bed as a tablet. And it actually is really hard to do this. It's really hard to make a display dim without getting weird flicker effects or buzzing, or, I mean, you have to do it right, otherwise it doesn't look good. So the Surface Pro 10 is going to a lower brightness, but only just. The MinisForum V3 is lighter, and wouldn't be as good in the dark to be very, very low light, but it is still one of the dimmest, able to go as dim as any other laptop I've ever seen, except maybe the Surface devices, because they are very good at that. Okay, let's bring our brightness back up, and let's talk about one more thing that is directly comparing these two. So the function keys on the Surface Pro 10 can be toggled. There's a function lockout that you can toggle on or off, where on the MinisForum V3, you basically have to hold down the function key to do your brightness up and down, or use any of the function keys. Otherwise, it's the common F1 through F12. Now, I don't know if there's some fancy keyboard shortcut that maybe MinisForum has in the software, but so far, the keyboard itself does not have a function lock. So there you go. This is test video and audio from the MinisForum V3 camera and microphone. This is test video and audio from the Surface Pro 10 camera and microphone. Well, let's talk for a quick second about pen storage on this device. Now, the MinisForum, at least in the US, does come with this pen at launch, and it does magnetically attach to the side here on the top of the device, which I actually like quite a bit. A lot of machines, you would be surprised the amount of tablet devices that give you no place to put your stylus. And if you put your stylus in the bag, you're done. You're never going to pull that thing out. This way, you can grab the stylus super quickly. It's always, dropped it. It's always there. The Surface Pro 10 also has the stylus, and it's hidden in this department here, down in the bottom, which charges the pen, which that is a nice integrated feature. It's very refined. This particular one needs to be charged via a USB-C. But it does give you a place up here to put that. And I do like that it is like super accessible, even more accessible than the Surface Pro, but the Surface Pro is way more integrated, charges on its own. So pen storage, very nice to see, very easy to carry like this. Pen magnet is quite strong. What I don't like about this placement here is the Surface pens used to have a thin rubber strip on the edge of the pen that made it feel very, very tight, very connected. This, when you're holding it in your hand like this, if it's the pen's kind of right there, and you can feel the pen sliding around and the plastic kind of grinding on plastic a little bit. Which I don't like. I would prefer if this had a rubber edge, flat edge of this pen, like the old Surface pens had, and that it felt a little more tight. So it's a good, again, they've done a lot of things like B+ level on the MinisForum, but it's going to take that next iteration for them to get to an A level. But a B+ is really good for a first version. Like, this is so much better as a Surface Pro clone than a lot of competitors even get to. So I think that the pen implementation is quite good. And again, we'll be doing a video with a pen review in the future. But comparing the way the pen stores on the MinisForum, it's definitely something I like. Okay, so I'm going to start these at the same time and see which ones load first. So we can see the AMD loaded up first.
You're good. You're good. You're good. And stop.
And the interesting thing here, and this is why Microsoft really should have done an AMD chip on the Surface Pro, because look at the power consumption. The Surface Pro 10 is using 40 watts, and the MinisForum V3 is using 31.6. So here we can see that the fans kind of kicked in on the Surface Pro 10, and the watt usage consumption went up to 44 when that happened. And the MinisForum V3 is stayed at 31.6 the whole time. Our score on the V3 is closing in on 3,000, while it's at 2.5 over here. Now, what if I told you that I'm tricking you and I'm running the V3 at its lowest power mode, and the Windows 10 is running as fast as it can go in its highest power mode? So the V3 in its lowest power mode gets a 3093, while the Pro 10 in its highest power mode gets a 2658, while using way more power to get a lower score. Now, does that make any sense? Should we be using Ryzen APUs or not? So let me put this like in the simplest way I can. You can use about 30% less power to get 16% more performance using the AMD APU versus the latest 165U, 14th gen Intel. Or if you set them to use the exact same amount of power, you get almost 40% more performance in this application using the same power. So say it with me, AMD is more efficient than Intel at these power levels. It's the better choice for thin and light devices. It just is. So there's lots of ways to look at this when you're comparing the Surface Pro 10 versus the MinisForum V3. And there's questions of value, there's questions of performance, there's questions of comfort, there's questions of which one just fits into your life better. Now, I would say like these are very similar devices despite looking fairly different. Functionally, they do a lot of the same things with their kickstands and ability to transform into tablets. Which one's more performant? Absolutely, the MinisForum V3 tablet has much better performance than what you will see on the Surface Pro 10, particularly in the graphics arena. In terms of value, also the MinisForum V3 is a much better value. Some people were saying, "Oh, we expected it to be a $1,000 device," and then when it came in at $1,199 plus all the extras, they did include quite a few extras. That is a very compelling price if you're coming at it from the market that is a 2-in-1. An equivalent Surface Pro 10 is going to cost you $2,000+ to step up to something that has 32 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte. Like you're looking at $2,000+ easy on the Surface Pro 10 side of things. But when you look at the MinisForum V3, which comes with a 1 terabyte drive, 32 gigs of RAM standard, for $1,199 plus the extras, carrying case, the pen, the type cover comes with it. You got to buy the type cover separate on the Surface Pro 10. So in terms of value, the MinisForum V3 is an absolute value in this comparison. We talked about the performance. Talking about the comfort, they're pretty equal in terms of comfort until it comes down to using it as a tablet, because the Surface Pro 10 does have those rounded corners and is slightly lighter, not by much, but it is nicer as a tablet than the MinisForum V3, and that's mostly due to the sharp edges that we find on the MinisForum. But it's not uncomfortable. I just think the sharp edges maybe inhibit the tablet experience a little bit on this, but it's really not that big a deal. They're both very similar, but comfort definitely goes to the Surface Pro 10. It is a refined iteration. Which one would I personally rather have? Here's my take. If I have the MinisForum V3 that has quite a bit better graphical oomph than the 165U, like we're talking double, triple the performance. With the Surface Pro 10, there's enough graphical performance that it's like I could probably get away if I want to play like some casual games, and it'll look all right, it'll look decent. But if I really want to do anything noteworthy, I will have to plug it into an iGPU. And with the MinisForum V3, it literally has enough power that it can easily run almost all titles, including like AAA titles at really high details. Not all of them. Obviously, you get into the really high-end stuff, and you're gonna want to use the eGPU as well. But I mean, if we compare something like Genshin Impact, you might be struggling here at about 40 frames a second on the Surface Pro 10, where over here on the MinisForum V3, you're going at 90 frames a second. And being able to maintain, 90 frames a second on those casual games just feels so much better and makes it so I don't have to plug this into the external GPU nearly as often. You only reserve that for doing something VR or something that's really high-end title. So with this, it's like I could only play like maybe a few games, but with this, it's like it's going to be able to do almost everything except those highest end games, where at that point I'd probably be sitting down with a bigger monitor anyways and plugged into an external GPU. So for me, I think overall, especially for the value proposition, the MinisForum V3 definitely beats out the Surface Pro 10. But if you're someone who doesn't play games very much at all, and you put portability and comfort and the ability to have a great computing experience, high quality, easy, well, I don't know if it's easy. Microsoft has a pretty poor reputation sometimes when it comes to warranty, but they're going to take care of you. It's a little harder to deal with, a Chinese company to get returns done and things like that. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments which of these you would rather have. I think for me and my money, I think the MinisForum V3 is probably going to take the top spot for me. However, the Surface Pro 10, Surface Pro 9s, Surface Pro 8, all the Surface Pros of the world are still not outdone in terms of pure form factor, refinement, high quality materials. Microsoft still takes the cake on that. But it's such a unique new device that utilizes the most powerful yet efficient AMD APUs that this is a really fun device to have, and I'm so glad that a manufacturer is implementing a tablet like this, and I think it is a great first iteration. But hit that subscribe because there'll be a more elaborate, as if this video wasn't long enough, a more elaborated review of the MinisForum V3, including pen usage, including eGPU configuration, and just tons of videos coming out for the MinisForum V3. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next ones.